Welcome to everyone here. We'll have more people walking in the door, and welcome to everyone online as well. This is a blended event as we do these things these days. If you don't know me, my name's Stephen Howes, and I'm the Director of the Development Policy Centre here at the Crawford School of Public Policy, part of the Australian National University. Let's begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting, and pay our respects to the elders of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. We're really delighted, we were really delighted when we heard from the AIIB and had the offer of hosting a lecture by the President of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And please do welcome Mr. Liqun, President of the AIIB. He has a very distinguished career as a previously served as Vice President and Ranking Vice President of the Asian Development Bank, and as an alternative Executive Director for China at the World Bank and the Global Environment Facility. And I think as a Vice Minister in the Finance Ministry in China, and has been involved, has been President of AIIB since its founding, which was in 2016, and in fact has been involved with the AIIB since before then. Before I hand over to Mr. Jin, I'm just going to take a little short trip down memory lane. Some of you will know that we hold a conference every year. It's called the Australasian Aid and Development Conference. We think it's sort of the premier regional conference on international development issues. We do it with the Asia Foundation. And we started in 2014. So we've got the next one coming up in 2013. In December, it should be our 10th, but because of COVID, it's actually going to be our 9th. But in 2015, we actually had a talk by Mr. Qianhua Zhou, or Zhou Qianwu, from the Asian Pacific Finance and Development Center, Ministry of Finance, China. And the title of that talk was China's New International Development Initiative, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And that was really the first time the AIIB had got an area in Australia. And, you know, we put all the conference material up on the web, so it's still there. And just in preparation for tonight, I went back to that presentation, and one of the points mentioned in the PowerPoint under recent progress was set up a working group to speed up the preparation of AIIB as early as March 2014, with former Vice Finance Minister Mr. Liqun as group leader. So it's very interesting and appropriate to have you back here to, 10 years later, tell us what's happened. I also noticed in this presentation that it mentioned that on 4th of January 2015, New Zealand became a prospective founding member, making it the first developed economy in the AIIB. And I think it was a few months later, at that stage, our conference was in February. Now it's in December, but at that stage it was in February. It was only a few months later. In fact, Australia joined. I don't know if Australia was the second, but it was one of the early developed country members. So, we like to take some credit for Australia's membership through this early positive promotion for the AIIB. But it's certainly something we've been interested in for a long time. To be honest, we don't have as many speakers from China as we used to have. So it's all the more important to have opportunities such as this. I think we're all really looking forward to tonight's lecture. So Mr. Jin will speak for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to have an open Q&A, which very kindly agreed to have, just take whatever questions you have. If you're online, you can also submit your questions either through the chat function or by raising your hand. We'll try and take questions both from people in the room and from people online. So it should be a very interactive and engaging session, I'm sure. Finally, I'll just highlight the title. We're also really delighted to get this title for this address, which is Building AIIB, Asia's New Infrastructure Development Bank, and Australia's Strategic Role. So please welcome Mr. Jin.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to begin, I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of this land that we meet on today, and pay my respects to the elders, past and present. I would like to thank the Development Policy Centre, Professor Steve, Khalid, and your team for hosting me here today. It's really a privilege to be amongst so many august minds of development policy community. And I would like to acknowledge the importance of your work and policy research for the development community at large. The title of my address today, this evening, is Building AIIB Asia's New Infrastructure Development Bank and Australia's Strategic Role. I would like to take this opportunity to address you all on the history, no matter how short, of AIIB's establishment in 2016, our rapid growth as a new member of the Multilateral Development Bank family, and the critical issues that are exercising the minds of many young talents that have joined our bank over the last 8 years, namely the climate change and the growing momentum behind the MDB reform agenda. This is what we've been doing. Over the last 8 years, AIIB has grown rapidly. In 2016, we began with 57 founding members, including Australia and New Zealand. One of the innovations behind our bank's governance is that this bank was structured to give developing members a larger voice within a framework that incentivizes consensus building. This model has proved to be successful, and more successful perhaps than I could ever imagine. As of our last annual meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt a few weeks ago, we've grown to have 109 members, making us the second largest NDB in terms of membership, next only to the World Bank. We have issued $45 billion in financing in 36 of our members across 238 projects in infrastructure sector and include health, technology, education, transport, and renewable energy. Perhaps I should mention all this has been done by a very small team. We have 520 people plus some of the consultants from 65 nationalities. Our bank's core focus addressing Asia's infrastructure financing gap, which in 2017 is estimated at perhaps $459 billion a year, according to the Asian Development Bank's statistics. We invest across 4 thematic focus areas. First, green infrastructure, promoting cross-border connectivity, technology-enabled infrastructure, and importantly, private sector capitalization. So green economy, promoting cross-border connectivity, technology-enabled infrastructure, and private sector capital mobilization. Our bank has a counter-cyclical role to play. Though this is a secondary role to our core infrastructure financing, amidst the onslaught of COVID-19, AIIB extended $30 billion in COVID-19 crisis recovery financing to Cambodia, India, Mongolia, Philippines, Turkey, India, Cote d'Ivoire, and others. The majority of our bank's shareholding is held by developing countries. Our bank was created in direct response to a genuine desire among countries for greater international cooperation, anchored in a vision to foster sustainable economic and social development in Asia and beyond. By investing in infrastructure and other productive sectors, the multilateral cooperation among our 109 members is bedrock of our mission, building upon our values, being lean, clean, and green, that serves as the cornerstone of this bank. Now here I'd like to highlight 2 points: infrastructure and other productive sectors. When we negotiated on this agreement, and we thought the mandate should be broad enough for this bank to cover areas or to do projects. You never know what kind of project which may pop up. And then COVID-19 occurred. So other productive sectors means we can do, for instance, social infrastructure, healthcare, education. Not a general kind of education, but education will help the young people fit into the AI, IT age. And being lean, this bank should be cost effective. We're not going to build a huge bureaucracy. And in our terms, we want to avoid institutional obesity. Any institution will tend to grow like humans. When you grow up to be 30, 40, 50, you put a lot of weight. We want to remain keen and lean. And the best way is to go to the gym every day. This means we have to watch very carefully whether we are building a lot of institutional cholesterol, institutional obesity. Clean, zero tolerance for corruption. Green, push for green economy, moving all these economies to net zero. While Asia is our primary focus, Asia cannot sustain itself in isolation. Asia economy's resilience and sustainability must be based on its integration into the global economy, be based on its connectivity with the rest of the world. So our now-regional strategy allows us to do about 15% of the finance to go to non-regional members to finance global product, public goods, and cross-border. We just don't do any projects in non-Asian countries. We focus on global challenges. We focus on connectivity. And this also helps with geographical diversification of our balance sheet. Our bank is capitalized to $100 billion and have more than aggregate capital for the time being. With our robust financial position, we continue to diversify our funding sources and broaden our range of financial products. We priced and issued our first ever and Asia's first ever climate adaptation bond in May 2023 to support investment with a strong focus on building resilience. The 5-year bond raised $500 million Aussie. In Q2, we completed the setup for additional capabilities in Europe and progressed work on RMB for local currency finance. So I like to highlight this 500 million Aussie dollar is very important for our presence in this country and help enhance people's awareness of this country, this bank, of which Australia is one of the most important ones, focusing on climate change challenges. And we currently have 26 operational currencies for our lending operations and treasury functions. This includes our launching of Asia's first ever climate adaptation bond in May this year, as I said, at $500 million Australian dollar issuance in the Australian kangaroo bond market, marketing a significant milestone in adaptation financing. We are very much grateful to Australian investors, to the Australian people for their support. Our bank has an innovative impact-focused governance model. We exist in gene pool of the Bretton Woods institutions. We stay in the gene pool of the Bretton Woods institutions with important new features, including a non-resident board that reflects modern corporate governance practice, with clear division of responsibility between the board and the management. I'm proud to say that today, 8 years into operation, our bank has been recognized as a significant integral component in the global financial architecture. As a founding member, Australia has played a critical role in shaping the evolution of this institution. Australia is the sixth largest shareholder, with 3.8% of the shareholding, and is very ably represented by Director David Oswald on the board, who is also chair of the Policy and Strategy Committee. Indeed, Australia has a long line of very active and engaged directors, starting from Chris Leck, who was also the chief negotiator in the time when this bank was being set up. He was initial Australia's chief negotiator during the negotiation of this bank's partners agreements, who then later served on the board and as the inaugural dean of the board. Australia's active role in the bank has been critical to the bank's success. The presence of Australia and other advanced economies have been critical to ensuring the high standards of this bank. In addition to the $730 million that Australian government has paid into the bank, Australia's AAA credit rating lends strength to the $3 billion of Australia's callable capital that sits on our balance sheet. So this is very, very important. When setting up any new institution, I think there are many competing demands on our attention. As the bank shifts from the startup phase to our growth phase, Australia has been consistent in ensuring a continued focus on integrating the Pacific Islands into the bank's operations. The AIIB has 7 members from the Pacific Islands and has provided financing of $150 million to 2 of them, Fiji and Cook Islands, over which is COVID crisis recovery financing. As many in this room would know, obtaining infrastructure financing can be a challenge for some of these countries due to limited economies of scale, project preparation challenges, and debt sustainability issues. The bank is thinking about how to scale up our investment across our Pacific Island members, and I would like to welcome a discussion on this with you in Q&A if you like. I now would like to move to the topic of bank's operating environment. In 1881, American poet Walter Whitman wrote that the future is no more uncertain than the present. I think in his leaves of grass. While these words were written in the wake of the devastation following American Civil War, they could have been written about many crises afflicting humanity today. And I remember also his point about Captain. He refers to Abraham Lincoln. In today's world, we need Captain. We need countries who really can lead the whole community moving forward. And I'm very happy to see Australia is already doing this. Much to our chagrin, however, humanity is firmly tangled in a multi-layered web of interlocking crises, intensifying macroeconomic uncertainty, growing geopolitical instability, ongoing supply chain pressures, and ever more frequent natural disasters. The developing countries which comprise the majority of this bank's membership are the most exposed, despite often bearing the least responsibility. Uncertainty in our global community has reached a historic high. In the second quarter of 2020, the IMF's World Uncertainty Index, a measure of economic uncertainty, recorded the highest level of uncertainty since records began in 1959. Forecasts and opinions on future economic events are diverging more than ever. When the president appears so uncertain, it can be easy to lose sight of what we must do to secure our future, because we are busy dealing with the current challenges. Well, Woodman believed that the greatest poets placed themselves where the future becomes the present. So the same could be said for policymakers who seek to reform and strengthen our multilateral system so that humanity can meet the challenge ahead. People always come together, lay their heads together, try to work on a solution for the present crisis. But what is most important, you have to look ahead to see where the solution can really solve today's problems and help you deal with the future crisis or challenges. So we need to have a vision. And I often say, what is a vision? Vision is the ability to see what is yet to loom large on the horizon. Vision is the ability to see what is not visible to the naked eye. And that is a vision. And unfortunately, some people have no vision. As Shakespeare said, all eyes and no sight. So we need to have vision. While uncertainty has never been far, the future of humanity is chillingly clear for all of us to see. As IPCC's 6th assessment report, released in March this year, states, the choices and actions implemented in this decade will have impacts now and for thousands of years to come. Some 3.3 or 3.6 billion people that reside in highly climate vulnerable places live perched on the precipice of the decisions we make today. Firm and effective action must be taken to drive the transition full throttle towards net zero. The road ahead that humanity must take is obvious. And the Chinese philosopher Mencius tells us, the way of truth is like a great road. It's difficult to miss it. People simply woefully ignore it. If humanity's efforts to limit global warming to within 1.5 degrees is to be successful, climate financing must grow to 4.5 to $5 trillion annually by 2030, up from $653 billion in 2020. According to the IPCC, while sufficient capital and liquidity exist globally to meet this task, current financing flows are 3 to 6 times lower than what is needed, particularly for developing economies. Developing countries cannot be left behind in this race. Net zero can only be achieved by humanity working together. This race to net zero is not a sprint to first place. It's a yacht race on the open seas. To succeed, we must finish together as a crew, or we may not reach safety at all. Our bank has set a very ambitious target of growing our climate finance to at least 50% of our total financing by 2025, accumulating to about $50 billion by the end of this decade. In 2022, we delivered a record $2.4 billion in climate financing, or 56% of our total financing, reaching our climate finance goal 3 years ahead of schedule. In 2021, total climate finance by major MDBs totaled $82 billion, of which more than 60% went to low and middle income economies. However, colossal climate financing needs far exceed the fiscal capacity of governments and the balance sheets of multilateral banks. The private sector must play its part. Our bank is laser focused on mobilizing private sector expertise and capital. By 2030, our aim is to achieve that 50% of all our financing will be directed towards the private sector by 2030. We are investing in opportunities with the potential to leverage every even greater amount of private capital towards green infrastructure investment. We do this by de-risking projects for providing longer tenor loans, first loss investments, and guarantees for private finance projects. We're also mobilizing private capital by providing equity and debt to fund managers and financial intermediaries to spur broader investment into developing assets, technological and frontier markets, by creating products such as green bonds and asset-backed securities. We seek to broaden the investment even further. AIIB has been piloting different financial structures, like providing guaranteed products for risk mitigation and infrastructure securitization, to broaden the accessibility of infrastructure as an asset class for investors. An example of this in action is our bank's partnership with the Bayfront Infrastructure Management, Asia's first fully fledged infrastructure securitization platform. Bayfront was co-created in 2019 by Liqun Capital and our bank, with our bank taking 30% minority shareholding. Excuse me. In 2021, our bank invested an additional $60 million in infrastructure asset-backed securities issued by Bayfront. This issuance was the first of its kind in Asia and mobilized a total of $401 million for rated and listed infrastructure debt securities. These types of new financial structures must be scaled up as quickly as possible to meet the challenges ahead. A short supply of bankable projects remain a major constraint, particularly following the disruptions wrought by the COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical tensions. Building the bankable pipeline in the developing world is an important prerequisite to addressing climate change. Humanity's colossal climate financing needs far exceed the balance sheets of NDBs and fiscal capacity of governments. The private sector must play its part. So we continue to do this, and I would like to point out that blended finance has an important role to play. When used well, blended financing can bring multilateral development banks, philanthropists, private and institutional investors together to better allocate and distribute risks. We're very much encouraged to see some philanthropists are very much willing to work with us. An example of our bank's partnership with the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, AIIB, an energy transition accelerated financing platform, ETAF, a public-private platform that aims to mobilize $1 billion to support energy transition in 2030. We want to do more of this and show that we can move money faster while keeping true to the bank's high standards. How the multilateral system performs in this dominant era is much like the practice of gardening. Sometimes it's root and branch, sometimes you trim and make small refinements. Always, such reform should be ongoing and never ending. And always it must be done with our eyes set firmly on a horizon that goes beyond our lifetimes. And this bank has governing ideas of our own for the multilateral system. The first idea is to create and institutionalize the forum for international financial institutions to discuss progress and actions on climate change and climate finance. If humanity's moonshot for net zero is to be successful, then coordination and collaboration on climate finance is mission critical. In this regard, MDBs must strengthen their ability to operate holistically as a coordinated system. We now focus on MDBs working as a system, and this idea has been reinforced in the World Bank AIIB's recent meeting in Marrakesh. In this regard, we will do more and we will ramp up our efforts. I think I have reached the limit of my speech, and I would like to cut short a little bit. But I would like to get some time to talk about the reform process of MDBs. Ever since the Bretton Woods institutions were created 7 decades ago, as a practice, MDBs would have to knock on the door of the shareholders asking for capital increase again and again and again. Under the current circumstances, it might be more and more difficult. But the fundamental question is how these multilateral development banks can sustain themselves, sustain their business without relying on the capital injections again and again. So as you may know, recently MDBs are working on the capital adequacy framework. The report has been very good. It has already had some impact, but I think we have to do more in this regard. So even though our bank is not short of capital at this stage, but we are actively involved with discussions on this important topic. We also have contributed to the work of the expert panel, the G20 International Financial Architecture Working Group, and we are also involved in joint MDB Chief Risk Officer deliberations. Since publication of the expert panel recommendations, our management team has begun addressing recommendations that sit within our remit. So I will leave something over here because I think there might be questions which I would definitely respond. But I like to highlight the point. As a new institution, we build our initial success on the experience of the traditional multilateral development banks. A new institution may not be free from problems or mistakes. So we've been very much careful and prudent from day one. We would learn from the experience of our peer institutions and try to avoid some of the tours which will be inevitable for any institution. But we have benefited from the experience of our peer institutions, and we are working together as a system. We remain very much convinced that in spite of this huge challenge faced by humans, if we work together, we can solve these problems. And once again, I'd like to thank you for your understanding, for your support. And we will do our best to make sure that what we promise will be delivered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jin. I think it was a really comprehensive and interesting and challenging presentation or lecture. We have a very distinguished audience, lots of great minds here, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. And I have my own as a backup. I'm going to give you all the first chance. How will we access the questions online? You'll just tell me if there's some.
Yes.
Right. Okay, but we might go around the room first. So, Jonathan, I think your questions you can just speak loudly, and the microphone should pick up, and people online should be able to hear you speak. So, all right. Jonathan Pryke used to be at our centres, now with Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the lead economist with St. Helens, but that's Dave Osborne's old job. I'm so bigger and better. I'm going to take you up on your offer of in your presentation of how to scale up Pacific investments. I mean, as you well know, the demand, the need in the Pacific is insatiable. All the challenges you highlighted, limited banking projects, low debt carrying capacity, high risk of debt distress. It's very challenging for any partner to find a way to effectively operate in that space, to say nothing of the absorptive capacity of our counterparts to engage with all these different partners in a coordinated and meaningful way. So I'm very interested in your thoughts on how you can meaningfully scale up. Thank
You. Different countries have different problems to address, but we have to acknowledge some countries are faced with more challenges than others for various reasons. As I referred to the very small economy, for instance, Pacific Island countries. By their very nature, you'll find that they have to deal with a lot of challenges. And to say nothing of the fact that climate change is really very grave threat to these countries. But we're also taking care of some of these current issues, as I said. When you try to do something to solve the long-term problems, you definitely need to deal with the current ones. At the same time, when you try to work on the current problems, you need to look long-term. And in this regard, I think the multilateral development banks as a system with development partners, we need to work together. For instance, we have Pacific Island countries. I'm always thinking about how can we help them. Australia has traditionally very strong bond with the Pacific Island countries, and also New Zealand. So we're thinking about how we could work together. One of the I think approach, for instance, is to do some basic infrastructure projects. And with the contribution from Australia, New Zealand, maybe some other countries, to reduce the interest rate charges to them. So that an otherwise difficult project could be done. So one thing I like to highlight, we do not have either ADF, we don't have that. But we are also encouraging members to contribute voluntarily to buy down interest rates. Now, the difference between a purely poverty reduction project and an infrastructure project with reduced interest rate is that mostly poverty reduction projects will keep people free from their most serious problems to help them survive. And so when this money are spent on the surviving needs of these people, they will depend on your support, maybe, if not forever, for many years to come. So we are thinking about the poverty reduction in a new approach, which means to provide them with the means to develop their capacity on their own. So that is why we believe infrastructure projects with reduced interest charges would help this country to build their future. And that's something innovative. And I think we are doing this. There are some other countries, low income, in Asia. For instance, Cambodia, PDR, and Sri Lanka was in difficulties. One of the big issues for any country is the problems with the institutions. If the institutions are not up to a certain standard, it will be very hard. And if the institutions are really bad, even no institution is a failed state, right? That's why we're thinking about how we can help these countries to improve their regulatory environment, macroeconomic policy, but without dictating them, without lecturing on them. I think this is something we need to do. And so that people, the countries, governments will be more receptive to your policy advice. So we should not lecture them. We should sit down and talk to them and try to find a common solution. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's a fascinating dialogue. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thanks, Managing, for this good, interesting presentation, and nice to hear a clear and ambitious vision of the bank. I have two questions. First one is that the main thing of the bank is that the operation of the bank heavily depends on China's foreign reserves. And China's foreign reserves have declined a lot in the last 1 decade or so. If we're looking forward, China's trade surplus are likely to decline further in the future for two reasons. One is China itself has been rebalancing its economy, and second reason is that because we know that there's geopolitical conflict between China and Western countries. So this means the foreign reserves are likely to decline further in the future. If that's the case, would that make the operation of the bank increasingly difficult in the future? Second question is the loans from the bank are used to support infrastructure development. The development of the infrastructure tend to promote growth in the construction sector and more broadly in the service sector. And these sectors, the sector that is hand are mostly not tradable, which means that the products from this sector cannot be exported to increase foreign reserves of foreign countries. So this will such growth model towards non-tradable sectors make those countries difficult to pay their external debt. Sri Lanka is a very good case, and also Zambia and several other countries in Africa also in a similar situation. So from the lender's perspective, so there is an increasing risk of default from borrowing countries. So is this a potential problem for the bank if we look in the future? Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, this bank with developing countries shareholders, we have the capital base of $100 billion. Based on this capital adequacy, we can work on our own for many years to come. And if you look at our agreement, we have some innovative ideas which can help this bank to depend on its own ability to augment capital base without having to knock on the door of shareholders for capital increase. That might be music to the ears of so many treasuries in this world. So once the bank is set up, any member's growth rate, high or low, is irrelevant, I would say, because we work on our own in this institution. Your concern over China's growth rate probably is more related to China's trade and economic relations with the rest of Asia. Maybe Chinese growth slowing down would probably give less market to some of the ASEAN countries, Asian countries. Maybe in that case there could be some connection. But I would like to highlight the point. Chinese economy will continue to grow, but not like 7, 8, 9, 10. The Chinese economy is more or less mature with a larger, much larger economic base. If China can continuously grow on a steady pace, let's say 4.5%, 5% steadily, that's good enough. That's good enough for its trading, partners. Because, as you know, any economy's contribution to itself and the neighboring countries is the steady growth rather than major fluctuations. When you grow very fast, you certainly can give more opportunities to neighboring countries, trading partners, but sometimes when the recession came, and you find major disruptions. So in my view, first of all, we should keep optimistic about the steady growth of the Chinese economy based on the recent policy initiatives issued by the Chinese government. And I'm a Chinese, and I've seen with my own eyes how the government would respond to the challenges very promptly over the last 4 decades or something. So if you read the Chinese policies, I think you should not have that much worries. With regard to some of the sectors, tradable sectors, non-tradable sectors, I think this is exactly what we have been trying to do. We are providing support to the Asian countries so that their economic resilience will be increased. To the extent possible, their economy could be diversified. Because I have to be very cautious, and economies' ability to diversify is always constrained by the size of the population, by its geography, by a lot of things. What I mean is try to diversify to the extent possible to improve your resilience. So this is what we need to do. For instance, when the economy is very good in a certain sector, should we continue to support that sector? Or should we discuss with our country, maybe you have potential in some other areas, right? It might be difficult, but something you have to do from the long-term point of view. So I don't think we should be too worried about the negative impact of Chinese economic growth slowing down. Rather, working in Asia as a regional economy, improved connectivity and economic integration, that can help a lot of some of these countries. And actually, I think it's very important to strengthen the connectivity and economic integration with the non-Asian regions. Asia cannot sustain itself on its own. And China is very clear. China should keep open to sustain itself and provide growth impetus to its neighbors. Thank you.
Peter, yeah.
Thank you very much, Liqun. It's very nice to have you back in Canberra, Australia again. You emphasised the importance of mobilisation, the huge investments required to deal with sustainable growth. The climate change issue is critical, and the role of the MDBs in that, and acknowledged that the MDBs alone can't affect the transformation that's necessary in capital markets. They're a very important part of the solution, but only a part of the solution. So I wanted to kind of ask you a question about what more we can do in international financial markets to mobilize those funds. China and the United States were playing a leading role in the Sustainable Financial Working Group in the G20 and thinking about these issues in the past. That's run into trouble, probably. So what are your thoughts about what we can do in terms of international financial reform? We're doing quite a lot of things at the national level. China's done a lot of things at the national level in terms of financial reform, but doing these things cooperatively globally is going to make a bigger difference. I wonder what your thoughts are on how we might proceed in affecting the financial reform globally that might help direct more private finance into sustainable investment.
Thank you. I think there are certain forums or certain groups who are working on the coordination and cooperation. G20 is a case in point. G20 focuses very much on dealing with global challenges and improving the climate for private sector investors. And also major economies such as the United States and China are also working together. And you may have noticed recently there's been increased dialogue between the United States and China, talking about a lot of things. Climate change certainly is one thing, but improving the investment, enabling money for businesses is also something very important. And in spite of some of the fundamental differences, which is very hard to overcome, and both the US and China see broad scope for cooperation, which is very good news. Now, about international capital markets, the best way is for us to improve the way the international financial architecture. In this regard, the World Bank and AIIB are doing a lot of things to help the low-income countries deal with some of the challenges they are facing with. And we should understand one thing, that given the reduced weight of US economy in a global economy, it would be very risky, or it's almost impossible to continue to depend on the US dollars as a major international reserve currency. 65%, 70%, with the economy going down to maybe 20-25%. This is not possible. So if we really want to improve the international capital market, it is very much important for the other countries' currencies to play an important role. Euro is one thing, and traditionally GPS, pound sterling, euro, and Japanese yen, and are also playing a very important role. RMB is also doing its job, but still very much limited. As I said, Australian economy, and also can contribute. Now, when we have the major reserve currencies, I say like a basket of the currencies IMF, when the major currencies are working together, that will stabilize the global capital markets. And everybody knows the Triffin dilemma. The Triffin dilemma would be really a problem if the US economy relative weight continue to go down, whereas the US dollars settlement, internet settlement will keep it very high. What can you do? It's not possible. So my view is, in this regard, IMF can also, working with these major economies, try to see how we can stabilize the international capital markets. Only in that kind of circumstances could it be possible for private sector investors to feel comfortable investing in a particular country, because they're very much worried whether a particular market will have serious problems. And I believe this is something very important, probably as important as the climate change financing. Because if this collapses, there's no money for you to finance the climate change mitigation adaptation. And there's too much volatility we have experienced over the last 10 or 20 years. It's a difficult issue, but I think it's very important for these countries to work together. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, please.
Hello, I'm Kirsty Jones. I'm in the Institute for Infrastructure and Society. Our work looks specifically at the role of social inclusion and economic inclusion in delivering infrastructure. We're very interested in how we can provide institutions such as yourself with research-based solutions to help you support your vision and to help get there. I'm particularly interested in, given what you mentioned about the AIIB being such an efficient organisation which is much smaller than the other MDBs. What role do you see for universities to help and support the vision that you have being achieved?
We are very much interested in working with research institutes, think tankers in the universities, and to promote some of the ideas or to come up with some ideas of development. For instance, our annual publication this year focuses on nature as infrastructure, and we work with some of the research institutes and some of the universities to get their ideas. We do not have a huge economic department. To say lean, we can work with some of the universities, research institutes for some particular issue, depending on their strength, right? So we came up with this idea, nature as infrastructure, because you build infrastructure in nature, on the planet. And if this planet, the nature itself, is being destroyed, how can you talk about infrastructure, right? So we are very keen on working with the university research institutions. And if you have very good ideas, maybe this is the idea you should pick as the next theme of your annual publication. So they're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we are almost out of time. Are there questions online?
Yes, there's online questions.
Did they chat or?
Yes, I can read them out.
Okay, or maybe a couple. Yeah.
So Shell Lyons asks, in your judgment, what are the main barriers at present to mobilizing more Asian institutional investors to make climate change investments, particularly adaptation investments through the AIIB?
I think I have referred to that point. One of the major problems we face with this is the uncertainty. The uncertainty could be due to geopolitical tension, but it can also be due to the lack of enabling environment for the private sector's investment in a particular country. For those economies with strong institutions, the rule of law, and very predictable policies, you don't have to worry. What we are worried about is those countries which cry out for resources, but with poor institutions and lower institutional capacity, and probably less predictable environment for investment. And our contribution is not simply to provide some resources for them, and that would be very much limited. My view is any outsider support, any donor support or NDBs are limited. A country's development essentially is based on its own drive to push forward and its political determination and the popular support for reform. That is the only way to change the destiny of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Bryce also asks, what do you see AIIB's role in supporting economic inclusion to be? And what practical steps can the bank take now to support economic inclusion through its investment decisions?
Our investment to improve connectivity is the fundamental approach to get these countries integrated. For instance, landlocked countries are traditionally believed to be at a disadvantage. But then, if you help these landlocked countries with connectivity, then you find it's land rich, it's no longer landlocked. Sometimes we have double landlocked countries. So building roads, railways, and land ports would help them. I want to highlight the point. We build infrastructure for tomorrow. What does that mean? The infrastructure must be designed, implemented, and maintained by new technology to reduce wastes, to reduce emissions in the construction, and to have a long-term impact for the climate change mitigation adaptation. So those countries can benefit enormously from the connectivity projects. And also I want to highlight the point, do not put infrastructure projects and climate financing projects at odds with each other. They could be one and the same kind of thing. We provide, for instance, support for renewables. There are certainly climate change financing and developing renewable energy. When we promote mass transit systems, improving, for instance, the transmission systems efficiency, we are also contributing to the climate change mitigation adaptation. So once these working together, they are interlocking with each other, the financing will do its job. And also I want to highlight the point that we should use the modern technology to improve the quality of projects. In one of these countries, we use digital technology to monitor the progress of the implementation project. That helps. Excuse me.
Good, thank you. Look, we are out of time. I think I'm going to use my prerogative as the chair to ask the final question, if you don't mind. I just wanted, you mentioned towards the end of your speech MDB reform or gardening, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to perhaps say a bit more about that. You gave a few ideas around climate change financing over the forum, look at the capital adequacy framework. I know one hot issue now is around the preferred creditor status of MDBs. Be interested to hear about that from your perspective. Anything else you want to say on MDB reform to close off?
Preferred credit status has been criticized by some of these people. So why do you enjoy this privilege? Why do you enjoy the preferred credit status? But to be fair, because of this, the NDBs could maintain their AAA rating, thereby raising capital or raising funds from the capital market. Their funding cost will be much lower, and thereby helping the low, particularly helping the low-income countries, which most of them have no way accessing the international capital market. So this is not a special privilege, it's also the obligation of the MDB to help low-income countries. And also, you see, sometimes it's kind of pressure. If the NDBs are treated as just another investor, there's no incentive for a country, even in distress, try their very best to meet their debt obligation. Because this is a traffic light. If you fail, if you are delinquent in your debt obligation to MDBs, the traffic lights everywhere turns red. So you have to pay back. Thereby, the government will have to be very much careful about how to deal with this kind of thing. My view is any government should be responsible because it's in the long-term interests of their country, of their people. And if you can just default, you just don't care, I think the damage will be even greater. So now, in return, the NDBs should do their best to help those countries which need their help. So it's not simply a one-way street. It's not a privilege. It's not the, kind of a special treatment. You should also do something more for the people countries.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are out of time, and I'm going to bring proceedings to a close. I do hope you will join us for drinks after this lecture. But it was a great lecture. Thank you very much, Mr. Jin. I think you covered a lot of ground. You gave us an update on the AIIB operating model, on the results, but you also sort of canvassed a much bigger, painted a much bigger canvas, talk about the environment, about climate change, but also the broader sort of strategic and economic environment. I think you gave us a number of interesting pointers for the future. You don't have a concessional fund, but blended finance is something to look for, and you don't want to left countries, but you may get involved in economic reform, and perhaps that means budget support. So I think you've given us a lot to think about and to look for in the coming months and years. So thank you everyone for attending, and please join with me in thanking the President of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank.